Methodology reflection. Why I study trajectories instead of averages. Number 1482, VPT Sharp 043, December 28, 2025. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Research Methodology. Executive Summary: A systems engineering approach to chronic diseases. Traditional population-based medical research relies on statistical smearing. Averaging, that erases high-frequency transients, the exact outliers, responsible for mechanical failure in biological systems. By applying Viscoplastopology, VPT model, we can identify the deterministic triggers of mortality events, such as stroke, that Gaussian models systematically ignore. Key insights: mechanical versus statistical failure. Chronic diseases are not just biological states, they are fatigue to fracture processes in a coupled continuum mechanical system. The singularity effect, a single acute hypertension spike, for example, 175 mm of mercury, can exceed the ultimate tensile strength of my calcified microvessel, causing rupture. Even my long-term average blood pressure appears well controlled. Instrumentation: N is 1, high-density blood pressure. Sampling: approximately 16 measurements daily, nearly 12,000 blood pressure. Data points within 5 months, is required to capture my spike velocity, dPdt, the pressure change over time, or strain rate, which are the true drivers of my vascular damage-caused hemorrhagic stroke, not averages. Stability over optimization, longevity, is defined as the widening of the safety margin, the delta between operational stress and the structural failure threshold. Introduction. From academic exercise to survival. My medical research did not begin in a laboratory, it began as a survival requirement. After living through 4 metabolic disorders for nearly 4 decades, progressing from obesity back to normal weight and from chronic hyperglycemia to stabilized blood sugar, I realized that understanding disease, only at the moment of diagnosis, is not wrong but fundamentally insufficient. Traditional medicine and most population-based research are built around snapshots, laboratory values, clinic vitals, and annual checkups capture isolated moments in time. These snapshots are essential for acute crisis intervention, but they are structurally incapable of explaining how chronic diseases evolve, how damage accumulates silently, and how a system finally fails, such as a vessel rupture. I approach the human body and medicine differently. I treat them as continuous math-physical systems, viewed through a continuum mechanics lens, governed by the same physical laws and mathematical theories that apply to engineered structures. In this worldview, blood is a moving fluid governed by fluid dynamics and hemodynamics, while blood vessels are deformable solids governed by solid mechanics. Fluid dynamics is a general branch of physics and engineering. Hemodynamics is a specialized application of fluid dynamics to blood flow in the human body. They share the same physical laws, but differ in scope, assumptions, and complexity. Together, they form a coupled continuum system subject to stress, strain, fatigue, energy dissipation, irreversible deformation, and eventual rupture. This damage energy can be expressed as, where stress, sigma, is a function of the strain rate, on epsilon, over time. The fallacy of the average in failure analysis. Population studies rely on large N is M, where N equals many, M, not 1, and use statistical averaging to extract a central tendency. Variability is treated as noise, and outliers are smoothed or excluded to define the average patient. From a statistical perspective, this is reasonable. From a failure analysis perspective, it is dangerous. Mortality, disease or death represents an extreme case, an outlier. In engineering, systems do not fail because of averages. Bridges do not collapse because of average wind speeds, and aircraft do not break apart because of average loads. Failure occurs because of peak loads, resonance, or rapid transients that exceed material limits. Structural collapse or rupture represents an extreme case, an outlier. The same logic applies to biomedical systems, especially those already weakened by decades of metabolic and vascular damage. For a patient like myself, who has suffered 36 years of diabetes, the average blood pressure provides a false sense of security, while the peak pressure prepares to break the system. The N is 1 high-frequency instrumentation. This is why I adopted a high-frequency, N is 1 longitudinal model for my personal medicine research, where the 1 is myself, spanning 36 or 16 years of data depending on the data, variability and purpose of particular study. I transitioned from being a patient to being an instrumented system. My body is my only available biolab, especially after my hemorrhagic stroke in June of 2025. I began collecting blood pressure data at a density that clinical medicine would consider excessive. Between August and December 2025 alone, over 5 months, I recorded 11,769 blood pressure data points. This involved measuring 3 biomarkers, SBP, DBP, and HR, with 2 additional calculated biomarkers, PP and MAP, approximately 16 times daily. using validated upper arm and wrist devices manufactured by Omrod on both limbs. This was not obsession. It was the collection of high-resolution telemetry data. Telemetry, in simple terms, refers to continuous time series measurements collected automatically, not occasional manual readings. Dense sampling allows better observation of volatility, spike magnitude, and spike velocity, dPdt. These transient overloads are the moments where survival is actually decided. The 2025 stroke, a small brain vessel break under sudden pressure. My stroke is a definitive example of why averages fail. I have never been a chronic hypertension patient. My stroke was not caused by an elevated annual average. It was caused by a single acute spike to 175 mm of mercury at noontime of June 21, 2025. That spike ruptured a calcified cerebral microvessel near the pontine region. This vessel had undergone 36 years of cyclic loading and metabolic stress. In materials science, this represents a transition from a ductile state, elastic, flexible, and resilient, to a brittle state, viscoplastic, stiff, and prone to fracture. From a statistical standpoint, that single reading of 175 mm of mercury is a minor outlier. From a mechanical standpoint, it was the peak load that exceeded the ultimate tensile strength, the yield limit, of a calcified structure. When data is smeared through averaging, three critical elements disappear: spike magnitude, rate of pressure change, and precise timing relative to structural vulnerability. What remains is a harmless-looking mean picture, yet that mean concealed a rupture event, with an estimated 70% to 80% mortality risk. My medical research methodology deliberately refuses this smoothing. I treat outliers as signals, not noise. The Viscoplastopology lineage, from Newton through MIT to medicine. My research philosophy belongs to a direct math, physics, and engineering lineage. My MIT PhD advisor, Professor Norman Jones, devoted his career to introducing Isaac Newton's concept of viscosity into viscoplasticity within solid mechanics applications in the 1960s. His work on viscoplasticity, the study of how materials permanently and irreversibly deform under high stress or impact with energy dissipation, later enabled Boeing to design and safely fly composite materials, jumbo jets 2 to 3 decades afterward. In December 2020, under Professor Jones's suggestion, I started to use viscoplasticity into my medicine studies. Over the past 5 years, I have published over 800 research papers, applying viscoplastopology to chronic conditions, and a variety of mortality-related diseases. To my knowledge, I remain the only researcher applying these math, physics, tools and engineering principles directly to human pathophysiology. Both Professor Jones's work in engineering and my work in medicine focus on the weakest link of systems. In a jet engine, a microscopic crack is an outlier that causes a crash. In a human brain, a calcified microvessel is an outlier that causes a dangerous stroke. We both focus on extremity cases that most clinical research models ignore: system stability and the water hammer effect. In viscoplastic systems, damage is often irreversible. Once a blood vessel calcifies, it loses elastic recoil and can no longer expand to absorb pressure surges. This is why I focus on strain rate, the rate of disease-related change over time. This strain rate is the central portion of VPT model, viscoplastopology. A rapid surge in blood pressure creates a water hammer effect, a pressure wave traveling through rigid, calcified vascular pipes. Because the vessels cannot deform elastically, the energy of the wave is directed entirely into the vessel wall. Repeated shocks accelerate fatigue, loading, leading eventually to vessel rupture. My objective is system stability, not merely normal or averaged lab-tested values. Longevity is the act of widening the safety margin between daily operation and catastrophic failure. This requires stable flow by minimizing spike frequency, fewer shocks by reducing pressure change velocity, lower cumulative energy by giving the body metabolic space, through fasting and sleep, to perform autophagy and internal maintenance. Conclusion: failure-aware systems medicine. I fully anticipate criticism and rejection. It took decades for viscoplasticity to be accepted in mechanical engineering, and I expect similar resistance from a medical field rooted in Gaussian thinking. However, my nearly 12,000 blood pressure data points collected over 5 months, my over 4 million personal health data points collected over 16 years, and my 2025 hemorrhagic stroke case study together provide a black box recording that statistics cannot explain away. I am not asking medicine to abandon statistics. I am asking it to recognize their theoretical limits. Statistics serve populations. Physics-based medicine serves individual patients. We must integrate failure analysis where it matters most, in patients who are statistically safe but mechanically fragile. My work no longer serves only my own survival. I feel an ethical obligation to share this failure map to help others reduce their suffering. Doctors save lives during emergencies. My data functions as the flight recorder that explains why turbulence occurred, and how the final stall or rupture might be avoided. This is the difference between a comfort report and true survival analysis. Words for the future. I am 79 years old now. My remaining energy is just sufficient to support my ongoing medical research workload. If I were younger, I would attempt many more efforts for future generations. First, I would translate my medical research methods and equations into programmable algorithms and extend my current medical AI software system, Chronic, which currently focuses on data collection, simple analysis, and research summaries, into a more advanced system with automated analysis and information synthesis. This extended AI software system would analyze lifestyle behaviors and overall health conditions, and predict mortality disease outcome probabilities, not just metabolic disorder conditions. While accuracy may not reach 100%, it would be accurate enough and sufficient to meaningfully guide patients. However, data collection depends heavily on patient willpower and long-term persistence, which remains the most difficult challenge. Some data can be collected automatically through connected devices, such as weight scales and CGM systems. Other critical data still require manual input. AI can perform some semi-automated tasks, such as gap filling, rough estimation, and approximation. But sustained data consistency and accuracy ultimately requires human effort. My vision for an AI that predicts failure probabilities, rather than just averages, would be a paradigm shift. If an AI could tell a patient, your current strain rate, DPDT, puts you at a 15% increased risk of vessel fatigue today, it might trigger a different behavioral response than a simple "your BP is high." If such a medical AI system were broadly available, it could significantly improve long-term health maintenance and reduce mortality-related disease risk. This represents what AI technology, combined with my over 8,000 hours of dedicated medical research, can realistically contribute to human health. Disclaimer: I write this article not for fame, but to share what I have learned, so others can understand complex systems, prevent failure, and live better lives. This content is provided for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this article freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights belong to the author. Gerald C.